Hello, welcome to the JD Theory. Today I've taken on the challenge of ranking every album by The Doors from least favorite to my absolute favorite. Now, this task in itself was quite the challenge. The Doors' discography is extremely consistent and strong, so putting one album over another, it hurt my soul a little bit. But alas, here we are. I should note there will be no live albums included, no compilations, no soundtracks, or Morrison speaker tapes either. We are ranking the studio albums released by the band. So that leaves us with 9 albums. So with all that preamble out of the way, let's jump straight to the list and my number 9 entry. The first album on the list is the first album without Jim Morrison steering the ship. Yes, Other Voices is my least favorite album by The Doors. What else could have been here? Well, I'll say the next 2 records are no classics either. Other Voices is an album that feels a bit lost, which is fair considering the circumstance of release. It also finds itself as a novelty record. I would never go back to it based on its own merit. The entire appeal of this album stems from the thought, I wonder how the Doors would sound without Morrison. And the answer on this record is unfortunately plain. The album has a lack of anything, no punch here. This is a plain buttered bagel. If I had to pick 3 tracks from this record, I'm taking Eye of the Storm, Variety is the Spice of Life, and I'm Horny, I'm Bored. Now keep in mind, just because these 3 tracks are the most notable, it doesn't mean they're great. Honestly, there's nothing really great about this album. It's not bad for what it is, it just has a dire lack of magic in these tracks. So lack of Morrison is super apparent on everything here, and while this album is inoffensive, it's just as unmemorable. Yet the band wouldn't throw in the towel just yet. Yes, they would press on and drop one more record with this lineup, that being my number 8 entry. Now, while this album's existence is by far the most baffling, for the fact that they pressed on without Morrison yet again, despite their last record flopping. But this album does a slightly better job than the last one. Not to say it's amazing, but what this album does do is find a groove. The songs are much better written, instrumentally and literally. Other Voices was trying to be everything while achieving nothing, while Full Circle finds itself as a better follow-up to LA Woman. Because I think without Jim, the Doors had still established their direction as more bluesy rock at this point, less psychedelic, which for this era of the band, I think it suits them best. The 3 standout tracks on Full Circle for me are Vertilac, The Mosquito, and The Pecking King and the New York Queen. These really highlight the strengths of the band and showcase their post-Morrison sound effectively. Even the scale of this album is turned up a notch. We see progressive elements throughout the runtime. Now, while I do find this album impressive for what it is, there is one more post-Morrison project, but the difference is the last one had vocals provided by Jim. This album finds itself at my number 7 entry. Yes, An American Prayer, the final album by The Doors, finds itself at my number 7 entry. We have Morrison's final full record, which is manifested in a much different form. This album is a semblance of Jim's poetic verses backed by the band, providing instrumentals. This album is a one of one in terms of uniqueness. I can't think of a single band to have put together a record of this variety before. I find it to be a very nice tribute to Morrison. The dude loves his poetry and he loves his rock and roll. This record is merging the two. And when I say poetry, I don't mean his verses are poetic. I mean he is literally reading poems. The 3 best examples of this album would be Ghost Song, An American Prayer, the self-titled track, and A Feast of Friends. Of course, Roadhouse Blues finds itself on this record, but I see that more as a bonus. If we're talking strictly original tracks from this record, I'm taking the 3 I listed. There's also a level of relaxation I associate with this album. Although the words may be dark and philosophical, it puts you in a lull state. This album is like reading a book on a beach chair in the middle of summer on a very calm beach. An American Prayer finds itself amongst the top of the other Post-Morrison records, but these first 3 albums I listed all pale in comparison to the next 6, because from here on out, we have the complete studio albums with the original lineup, starting with my number 6 entry. Of all the albums the band would release as a full group, Waiting for the Sun unfortunately has to come in last. Now keep in mind, I consider this album and every album from this point forward to be an absolute classic. The Doors, while fully together, never missed. That's truly how I feel. So yes, Waiting for the Sun is number 6, but it really just falls here because something had to. This was the Doors' 3rd studio album, and the sound would move in a slightly different direction from the first 2. We get some creepier sounding songs, some songs that are more pop oriented, and an overall warmer tone throughout. The 3 tracks that stand out to me most are Hello, I Love You, Love Street, and Not to Touch the Earth. Yes, the first 3 tracks are the best 3 tracks in my opinion. This album, it's very cohesive from front to back. 5 to 1 is an iconic closer. All in all, this album is amazing. It's tight, it flows, it has unforgettable tracks, but when stacked against the rest of the Doors discography, I just don't return to it as often. Also, my list is not set in stone. If I do this video a year from now, things are subject to change, as all things are. For now, number 6 is the most fitting spot. Following this, we have my number 5 entry. Yes, the 4th studio album, The Soft Parade, following Waiting for the Sun, both in release order and just topping it in my personal opinion as well. Now, before sitting down and making this list, I would have pegged The Soft Parade as number 6, but after some revising, there is so much to love about this album. While Waiting for the Sun would see some experimenting, The Soft Parade is a huge departure from the Doors' previous sound. We get a lot of big band, orchestral instrumentals on this project. We also get Morrison messing around with different styles vocally, such as crooning and shanty-esque folk. Now, this album does have a bit of an identity crisis with the way it bounces between different sounds, and while some may see that as a negative, I see that as this album's strongest asset. My 3 biggest standout tracks on this album are definitely Tell All the People, Touch Me, and Running Blue. But front to back, as with all Doors albums, there's something to love with every song. And you can most certainly count on an epic closing track, because it wouldn't be a Doors album if it didn't. Of course, I'm referring to the Soft Parade self-titled song. I think the biggest thing holding this album back from being higher on the list is how long it took me personally to click with it. Like I said, I had this pegged for number 6 before putting pen to paper, so who knows, if I ever revise this list in a year or 2, this album could be number 1 for all I know. But for now, number 5 makes sense to me. Truthfully, I nearly put the Soft Parade above this too, but that would be far too zealous of me, because if you're looking at the highest highs of both projects, Morrison Hotel has it beat. That's right, my number 4, Morrison Hotel, the 5th studio album the Doors would release, and another sonic shift, because this album would get more in touch with classic rock and roll. I feel a lot more influence coming from late 50s, early 60s rock and roll, hints of blues in there too. Jim's voice also has a bit more gruffness to it, which has slowly been happening album to album, but here it's a more stark difference. You notice it immediately. And the album's highlights are some of the most notable tracks the band would ever release. My top 3 picks would have to be You Make Me Real, Peace Frog, and Queen of the Highway. Also, the iconic Roadhouse Blues finds its way on this record as well. There's a lot to love about Morrison Hotel. You can see this album as a reinvention of the Doors, because not only did this album change the direction of the band, they would go even further in this direction on their next album. And yes, that album is my number 3 entry. That's right, my number 3 entry is L.A. Woman, the Doors' 6th studio album, and their final album with Jim Morrison. Unfortunately, Jim would pass after the release of this record. Rest his soul. L.A. Woman takes everything from Morrison Hotel and goes full-on bluesy rock. This album is darker, rougher, more raw, and certainly the best incarnation of the Doors doing the blues, essentially. There's something mysterious about this album, too. It sounds like you're in an old-school rock and roll bar. The walls, the floor, the roof are all made of wood. It's raining outside. Maybe there's 3 to 4 people in the bar, and you're wondering how this place is still open, but it's also oddly comforting, right? My 3 biggest highlights from this record have to be Love Her Madly, L.A. Woman, the self-titled track, and Hyacinth House. These tracks perfectly capture Jim's new vocal style while also showcasing a range of emotions and tones. And maybe their most iconic closing track in their career, Riders of the Storm, lands on this album. There's a lot to love. This album really makes me wonder what a follow-up would have sounded like. Would the Doors get even darker and bluesier? Would that have been possible? Or would they have switched it up again? Who knows? All I know is that L.A. Woman is a fantastic album with character, experimentation, and a sound that's unique solely to this project. Between the first 2 albums by the Doors, I chose Self-Titled as my number 1. Strange Days doesn't quite make the top spot. Even with that being the case, I would take Strange Days over 90% of all classic rock bands' entire discographies. It's that good. This album is infinitely replayable. Sonically, it's rooted in 60s psychedelia rock, very trippy instrumentals that still have an edge to them. And even if the Doors' first record will be at my number 1, you can do the math. There's 1 album left. Strange Days is definitely a more cohesive listen. I can even picture the first 2 albums almost as like a double album, since a lot of these songs were recorded at the same time. We even get a first glimpse of a full poetry track with Jim doing Horse Latitudes. I must mention as well the self-titled opening track, which sets the stage for this record. But if I had to choose 3 best moments, I'd go with Love Me 2 Times, Moonlight Drive, and People Are Strange. All these tracks are hits, and all these tracks are certified classics. Hell, this album is a classic. I'd have a hard time imagining any rock fan hearing this and not being blown away. I must also give a nod to My Eyes Have Seen You and the closing track When the Music's Over. Now, despite having a flawless track list, I couldn't put this at number 1, because all the same attributes and praise I gave to this record fully applied to the next entry as well. The Doors' self-titled debut record is my definitive numero uno. released on my birthday, January 4th, but long before me in 1967. And wow, this album is monumental. Every song is immediately catchy. You're hooked in this intoxicating atmosphere and keep coming back for the greatest choruses in rock history. I mean, this has to be the best debut album of any band, period. If you can think of anything comparable, let me know in the comment section down below. But we would get iconic track after iconic track, most famously Break On Through to the Other Side and Light My Fire. And good lord, the keyboard playing throughout this record is on another level. And how can I not give a nod to the closing track, The End, being first of many 10+ minute epic closing songs. Now, if I was forced to pick my favorite three, I'd tell you that's impossible. But for the sake of this video, I'm going with Soul Kitchen, Alabama Song Whiskey Bar, and Backdoor Man. Additional props to 20th Century Fox and I Looked at You. The truth is, from front to back, all 11 songs on this record are the highlight. There is not a single song on here that doesn't blow me away. And that's why the debut is number one. Maybe not the most developed in identity, maybe not the most cohesive record, but the quality of the songs themselves are definitive peak The Doors. So there you have it. That is my official ranking of The Doors' discography. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Please let me know down in the comment section below. And as for future discography rankings, I'd also like your input in the comments. I'm open to all ideas. Thank you for watching the video. If you made it to this point, please like the video, subscribe for more content, and share this video to a fellow fan of classic rock music. With all that being said, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.